If you read the description, then you know that I'm about to do some work on the exhaust system. So before I did that, I wanted to get some measurements of the stock exhaust system. Important to note here is that I find that a lot of the sound that I get from the car is actually coming from the intake, not the exhaust, because the exhaust is exactly the same as it was before I changed the engine out, but that intake is way, way louder.
I also wanted to take some measurements with the car in motion, so I came up with this setup with a microphone on the back of the car and the laptop inside and an action camera attached to the back. That didn't come out. And then of course I wanted to do some inside measurements so I know what it'd sound like from the driver's seat. And then finally I took some with the car going by and I enlisted the help of a friend. Alright everybody, so hello internet, this is my buddy Norm. Say hello to the internet. He's going to help me today with videoing the car and trying to get some of the sounds. And this is his badass machine. Check it out.
This is my Camaro.
Is it a 2020 or 2019?
2018.
2018.
Rally Sport package. It is 1LT and it's the Red Line Edition. So with the Red Line Edition, you get some additional features. You get a nice decal, tastefully done. You got a red panel on your fender, front fender, and you get nice red paint on your wheels. I added the caliper cover, which is red, which gives it a nice touch.
It does.
So
that comes with it too, I assume, the Camaro logo?
So you get the Camaro logo, and the Camaro logo on the back is blacked out.
Oh, that's sweet.
The Rally Sport package.
Yeah.
Red Line Edition.
Actually, the whole car looks a little blacked out from the back. Like the taillights have that sort of, they're like clear. They're not, mine's got amber and red and, for the brake lights, and yours doesn't.
Yeah. Yeah. It's nice. The red accent really, it really accents the car. I think the plain black is nice, but the black and the red is just awesome.
Yeah, I think so too. I think it's very tastefully done. It's just little touches here and there that make the car look good. And then the inside, he's got a few touches too. I forgot, did the red anodized come with it, or did you add that on?
No, I added that. That's from Camaro Swag. So you get the red anodized aluminum on your vents. So I got them on all four vents. And also, I got some red, those are plastic on the steering wheel. The inside, I wanted to stick with the, I didn't want to overwhelm the inside with red either, so I did the seats are leather, it's majority black. These inserts here are red, and that's the only thing. The stitching is also red. So with the stitching and the inserts, I think it looks tasteful.
Yeah, I think so too. Actually, I really like this car a lot. And I'm not really a big fan of domestic cars, but I've always liked the look of this model Camaro.
Yeah, my friends call it the Batmobile.
Yeah, it's kind of like that. And I'm not a fan of black wheels because I always feel like it looks like the guy lost his hubcaps. But with the red lines on it, it really makes a difference. And even though these are just covers, I like the way mine's just paint, so what's the difference, right? So I think it's a really nice looking car. Let's go see what it can do.
All right.
When I started this swap, I was under the impression that the 2ZZ would use 3 total O2 sensors just like the 1ZZ did, and that I would be reusing these, especially since this header from Monkey Wrench was made for a 2ZZ engine and it came with the bungs in the place for the 1ZZ. So I later found out that that's not true. It only uses one. I think it's this one. And that could cause drivability problems by doing it this way. I think the reason here is it's only measuring the O2 coming out of these 2 ports. That would be unmeasured because that's not being used, and so that could cause the problem. And in fact, I think I am getting a few drivability problems. Hopefully that is the cause, because what I'm doing now will correct that. So we'll find out. The drivability problems, I'm not sure what they're supposed to be, but in my case, when I was getting on the interstate the other day and doing the sound measurements, in 3rd gear I brought it up to 8 grand and then dropped it into 4th, and as I was going up I could feel the car sort of stuttering. It was having trouble getting up there. Also later, when I had it in cruise control at about 40-ish, 45 miles an hour, somewhere around there, I was in 5th gear, because don't forget this transmission has a pretty high ratio, so that was still like 2400 RPM or so, something like that. it was stuttering again. It was kind of like, I don't know, it was having some sort of difficulty. So I'm hoping that is the problem here, and what I'm doing will correct that. But before I do that, I first have to take all this stuff apart, starting with the bumper cover. And this time, I thought this time I was going to disconnect the electrical connections first, but as it turns out, I really kind of can't get to them. So I'm just going to do it the same way I did last time. Look how dirty it is. When I'm done with all this, it's getting a good clean in detail. I removed the back bumper cover, and there were a couple of supports that went here. And now I'm getting ready to remove the exhaust system. And since I'm going to remove it all, I kind of want to remember where it was. I mean, I can always put it back on, of course, but just for the new exhaust, I want to sort of get an idea of, you know, how close am I to the shaft down there? How far down did I come? Because I want to keep, my goal is to keep the new exhaust no lower than the old exhaust. That way I know I'm good. And just kind of like the idea of sort of seeing how it was put together, just, you know, for heat purposes. So, taking measurements, and I made some marks on the bumper that I can refer to later. Although a lot of them I don't think are going to matter since I'm doing whatever I want. But sometimes, you know, you get into it and you think, oh man, where did that go? Or how far away was that? Like, a lot of concern here for me is to keep this away from the rubber of the motor mount. I can see they favored the right side. Also, maybe it had to do with how long the catalytic converter was. And maybe keeping it away from the shaft. I don't think heat's going to be a problem because it's really thick metal. But I do want to make sure that I can access bolts down here when I make mine. Access the bolts that put it on the manifold. You know, the O2 sensors, depending on where they're going to be. Things like that. I want to make sure. Oh, and down below, another big one is I want to make sure that they can still, because my exhaust is going to come down in here, I want to make sure that they can still access these to align the car. So I need to make sure it's away or just above it or something like that. So these are all the kind of things you got to think about when you're doing something like this. Alright, FYI, if you watched the install of the 2CZ engine into the Spyder, you may have seen me struggle with that rubber hanger for 20 minutes, I don't know. I used water as lubricant on the top. This time I used silicone spray as a lubricant on the bottom, and it popped right off immediately. So that's a big relief. Also, I wanted it off the bottom because if I reuse the hanger, I'm definitely going to need to take it off the bottom. I'm not sure if I'll take it off the top or not, so I figured it'd be easier to do it on the car when the catalytic converter was held in place than it would be laying on the ground struggling with it. So anyway, that went really easy. I think I'm going to go in and have lunch. Remember, when supporting parts under your car, always use Richard's signature paint cans. I prefer the flat white. The next piece to come off is the muffler, and it just has 3 rubber hangers. One there, and then one way down there. And this guy seems to have a bolt holding on, so I might be able to push that out through there, and I think I'm going to do that. Got the muffler out. It's huge. And there's the catalytic converter, of course, which is also pretty big. And this is what it looks like. Look at all that space now. I was able to get the muffler out through this hole, but it took a bit of a struggle, but it does fit. Alright, I am now going to start the car with only headers on it. Why? Because I can. Kind of wondering why this Magnaflow already has a few of the holes plugged. I'm pretty sure you can see that on camera there, but I'm not going to worry about it. Alright, there's the difference in size between the old muffler and the new one. I gotta tell you, I'm a bit skeptical that that's going to do anything at all. But it does fit underneath. I have a gaping hole. I have a big pile of stuff. It's time to start putting stuff together. I've cut off the exhaust flange for the 2ZZ, and you can see, unfortunately, I was trying to get down to where they'd be round, but this one in particular comes off basically straight at an angle. It just automatically comes off at an angle. So I may be cutting these all the way down to the weld, which I find interesting because they welded, this is clearly a cast piece, you can see the sand, but they welded directly to it, and I've welded on cast before and it's horrible. It spatters everywhere and the weld isn't very strong. But you can tell these are machine welds too because look how perfect they are. But maybe if I'm down that low, I'll weld onto their weld and that'll work. I asked for this digital angle finder a long time ago as a present, and it's come in pretty handy a few times. If I make the pipes go straight parallel to the flange, then they're going to tuck way too far in, kind of like the base of this device. I need them to come out away from the axle. I mean, I suppose I could go that direction, but then I'd have to curve a lot earlier, and I need to get down below the frame there, the cross member. So I think I'd like to come out at about that angle for these to come sort of perpendicular to the ground, sort of so they're vertical, which means I need this angle roughly. I mean, it's not rocket science. It doesn't have to be, you know, super perfect, right? 8.5 degrees seems reasonable enough. I could go probably up to 10 if I wanted to make it an even number, but it doesn't make it easier to work, right? So I've clamped this one down, and then I'm going to cut these guys and put them on here and try and match this angle as best I can. And I'll just, of course, tack the stuff, and then I'll put it on the car and see how it works and work back and forth like that. I think that's kind of how headers are made, right? These are the first two pipes. They're not perfect, but they're pretty close. I think I'm happy with it. So I just need to tack them on. In order to get the headers to tuck in as closely as I can, give me as much space, I needed to cut them all down. So they're all about that size now. And I cleaned them all up. The design used for the header on the, I guess this was the Matrix, is kind of brilliant if you ask me. I mean, for a backyard mechanic, because when you have 4 pipes come together like this, you can't get the welder on the inside down in here, whether it's a MIG or a TIG actually. So what they did is they didn't bother to do that. See how they've got that cross in there? And I've got the camera light on, so hopefully it will show you what is going on inside. They welded on the very end there. That makes it easier to weld. And I'm going to use the same exact design. Now this is essentially a 4-into-1 design, but you can see there's a little septum on the inside here that they put, which basically keeps the 2 pipes from the center and the 2 pipes from the outside together. So for a very short section, it's actually a 4-to-2-to-1, but probably useless. But it's I don't know, it's pretty clever and easy to make, you know, so I like this design, and that's what I'm going to do. This is the first set of headers I've ever made, and I know that they can be challenging, and I'm finding the process fun, kind of therapeutic, but it is definitely challenging, and I think I have it really easy because most of my stuff's going to be kind of straight like this. I can only imagine trying to do something like this at home, you know, especially without a bender. I'd have 1,000 welds on that thing, right? They have machines, you know, that bend each pipe in the right orientation and they weld them in or something, but I don't have that kind of thing here. So I can see one of the challenges that I'm having is to get all 4 pipes to be in a bundle and meet. I'm going to need one to bend. You can see they don't have the same radius, right? If I do this, then if you bring that out straight, I'm cutting that one off, right? So it's got to come up to about there. But then this also needs to be longer to come to this plane here. Well, I'd cut along the curve. So if I try and cut further out, it's actually just going to be curving away. So that means I think I have to kind of do it the other way, like this. Another challenge is I think I need to do, I kind of feel like this was going to be a real elegant design where I had, sorry for all the banging around, where I had 2 come straight down. Well, maybe a slight angle, right, because they gotta come together, but basically straight down. And then these 2 at an angle, meaning that these were the shorter ones because they are basically straight, and these are coming at an angle. So I thought I would make these go on the bottom, and then these come in on the top. And that's great, except if you look here, this is where they need to intersect. 4 pipes need to come out here upward, and that is offset toward these two, so it's not right in the middle. So basically everything's going to have to angle down, so each pipe is technically a different length if I went straight to a single point. And that is because on the engine, there's where I need to be, and if you look straight on, it comes up more or less between these two pipes. Here's another challenge. So I believe this pipe is kind of where I want it to be, but it goes on the top. So to go on the bottom, you can see there that this pipe is lower than that. If this is where they ended, it would be easy to cut this in such a way that this was exactly, the top of this was exactly at the bottom of that, something along the lines of that, right? But it's not, it's out here. So I have to extrapolate if this one is diving below that one fast enough so that out here, one is behind the other. And at the same time, I have to hit this line here, so I have to move it in and out as well, and I have to extrapolate that line as well. So it's a little challenging. To help me visualize things in 3 dimensions, I made this little jig. It's actually kind of moves a lot, but that's okay. I just needed something in 3 dimensions to kind of tell me where this next piece goes, where to cut it down here to meet that one, and still have it, sort of hit the mark. This is a momentous occasion. I put my first couple of tack welds to hold the first pipe in place, and I thought I made it too short, but in fact, I made it perfect. It's exactly the right length. I'm super happy with that. I'm not real happy about the angle. I'm okay with the pipe, but down there at the bottom, I think it needs to rotate toward the tape a little bit, but that's okay. It's just held on with tape right now. So, woohoo! So I have the second tube tacked in place now, but not at the top. And there's a reason for that. When I get done, I'm going to have the urge to just finish weld it, but I won't be able to do that because I won't be able to get in between there. So what I need to do is remove one of these 2 pipes, say this guy here. If I cut the tack welds down here, I'll be able to lift this out, and then I'll be able to finish weld it at the top here, and finish weld this both here and here, and finish weld it down there, leaving it in place. Of course, I've got to make sure that I can get it off when the other 2 pipes are in, but point is, if I tack it, this guy to this and this guy's to this, then I'm going to have to try and remove this outer pipe by removing the weld down here as well as a weld up here. And I don't see any reason, because this is pretty solid the way it is. So just trying to think ahead here. Now I'm going to test fit it in the car. Obviously this gets hacked off there, but I'm going to test fit it in because there will be more that goes on here. I need that little flex pipe portion that goes on there, so it'll be long. So I want to see if I can get it in the car with this extra piece on. Primary tube number 3 is on, or technically it's number 2. I'm for some reason going in reverse order, but it seems to line up pretty well. I'm really happy with this. As you can see, I hacked off number 3, so I'll hack off number 2 just so I can use this little tube. That's what goes. This went there. So I'm using up basically 2 bends, or 1 full bend for every pipe. Half the bend is here and the other half of the bend is there, times 4. So it'll take 4 pipes. To test fit this in the car, I'm just using these 2 nuts here on the end, and I noticed that this flange actually has a bit of a bow in it, so it's out more on the ends than it is here. I don't know if that's by design or when I cut it all off I relieve stress or what, but I think it'll be fine. When it's bolted down and torqued down, it'll be held flat. There's a gasket after all. But what I noticed is, even though I clamp it down from those same 2 places on the table when I'm doing my welding, if you look down here, oh, sorry if it's bumping around, there's a gap right here, and that was touching when I welded it. Now this pipe and this pipe aren't welded, only that one is on there, so this is free to move around. So what I think I'm going to do to mitigate this is I'm going to keep them all loose down here, and when I get the last one in place, I'll come and torque it onto the car and then do final welding down here so that there's no built-up stress when I torque that thing down. I don't know if that's the right thing to do, but I kind of think it is. Primary number 4 on. It's a little tiny bit of a gap here, but nothing I can't fill with the MIG. I'm really happy with the way it's coming out. It's a lot like the PPE header, I guess. I didn't really make much of an effort to make them equal length. I just a little bit, like I knew this would be longer, so I made it on top instead of on bottom, which would make it even longer. But that's about all I did. So I think they get progressively longer as they go, but I'm okay with that. Well, my days of welding strong but ugly welds are certainly coming to a middle. I ground them down, not all the way, because they just get worse and worse. I'm really disappointed. When I was welding, I thought, oh, that's great, that's perfect, no problem, I'll just a row of dimes, and then, yeah, well, I'll try harder on the next part and see if I get it any better. Ugh. Alright, so I've torqued the flange down to the engine block, and now I'm going to tack on. This one's fully welded. One I figured is okay because it's kind of the base, and then I'm going to tack the rest of them in place in several spots while it's torqued down, and then I'll pull it off and do the finished welding. Oh, and of course I put the aluminum around just to protect plastic and rubber parts and stuff. And there's the finished product. Well, not totally finished. I got to do this end and put the collector on it, so it's got to be all ground down, everything. But with my angle grinder dead, I'm going to need to get another one. Fortunately, they're not too expensive. I'm really not happy with the way the welds look. I am just not an artist. What can I say? I think I use a little more heat, and I feel like these welds are actually a better quality. But on the inside, you can see I've actually got a little bit of maybe over penetration. This was the original one there. And then these have, yeah, a little bit much. I think it's all pretty solid and it's fine. It weighs in at 9.2 pounds. I'm happy with it. I think it's pretty good. So I'm pretty happy with the design anyway. It comes out exactly where I wanted it to. It's a little bit closer to the motor mount than the original exhaust was, but it's sort of centered in the hole, and I'm really happy with that. I could put a little heat shield on the motor mount if necessary, but I'm going to probably drive around with it like this for a while and just see how it works out. Of course, I still have to do the collector, and then I have to do the catalytic converter. And I know most of you are probably like, well, you're running a cat. Well, I don't want it to stink like fuel. I don't want to pollute, and I don't want to check engine light coming on all the time. So I'm going to try this aftermarket one. Then I'm also going to use a muffler, which I think may be absolutely useless. There's the first piece, and you can see it goes relatively straight here. I'll weld there. Same on the other side. There's number 2 tacked on. Here's the third of my clover leaf. I thought 4-leaf clovers are supposed to be lucky. It doesn't feel lucky. Before I continued on, I went ahead and welded a septum in for what that's worth. All 4 are done now. They haven't been welded on the top, but that's because the flange goes on there. So I'll just do that sort of all at one time. I got to make sure I get the angle right. And there's the finished product. I'm pretty happy with it. Fits perfectly. It was kind of fun to do. It's something I've always wanted to do. I think it came out pretty good. So this is my flex tube. It's too hot to put on the car now, but I'll put it on in a minute. And there is the flex pipe added on. To be honest, that looks so cool. feel like just leaving it that way. I mean, that is badass. Check it out. I mean, it's only 2 inches, but still, it's like, I don't know, it just looks so cool coming straight out the back like that. I'm trying to lay this out, and it's really, really tight. I think it's still doable, but you can see what it looks like from the back. That is more or less ground level, and you can see the cat basically sticking out there. Sheesh. I mean, that's where the exhaust pipes are supposed to go. Also, it's very close, and that's a very hot item. You can see how close it is to this plastic on the back bumper, and the back bumper goes in basically another inch. So, I mean, we're basically touching there. I mean, that's just gonna melt for sure. Gonna have to think this through. This is the part I ordered from Magnaflow, a 94064, and you can see even on the package itself, it says that it has a 2-inch input and 2-inch output, right? Well, for some reason, my 2-inch pipe seems to fit inside their 2-inch pipe, and when I measure it, what I get is about 2 1/8 inches. It's not that big of a deal. I mean, I can make that work, right? It just gives me a seam to weld on. Maybe it's even better. It was my intention to connectorize both the catalytic converter and the muffler so that I could take them off in pieces, but I figured if I'm going to replace it, I'm probably going to replace it with another Magnaflow, which is a weld-on. So if I weld it at this point, then I can make a much sharper corner and get it to fit better in here. So that's the next piece. I probably shouldn't have fully welded that part in, but I think it's gonna have to stay there no matter what. I did tack the catalytic converter in, so now I'm working on the next part, which looks like it's gonna go like that, but then it will come across from here, so I'll cut it and I'll do another bend. It'll come across here and then go that way toward the muffler. So this is tacked, one tack only, so pretty easy to remove, but it's still fairly strong and is coming across exactly like I want it to, I think. I'll show you where the next piece goes. It looks so beautiful. It always looks so beautiful with tacks. Then I'll go and weld it, it'll look like that. Well, I succeeded. I got everything below the level like I wanted to. It all fits under here. It's higher than the lowest point on the car. It's also higher than the old exhaust was. Houston, we have a problem. So my little loop down here interferes with the bumper, and I thought, well, I could cut the bumper away a little bit, but if you look down here, I would literally be cutting where it's sort of visible, and I don't want to do that, so like right through here. So I'm gonna have to find another way. To accomplish what I want to do, this will be just fine. It got really far away now, it's not touching anymore. I think that may be far enough away not to melt the bumper. I can also put some heat shielding in, so that will work for me, I think. Alright, I've used my multimeter and I've checked, because it was a little confusing to me from information I got online, although I think it was correctly stated in a few places that the O2 sensors I used are this one over on the right side of the engine, and this one that's behind the light here. This goes after the catalytic converter, that one goes before the catalytic converter, and this one over here is not used. So I didn't quite finish, and look at what 3 straight days of rain does when you take a break. Oh man, I got a lot of cleaning up to do. I do have some paint I can put on there to help protect it from that kind of thing. I'm gonna finish up the welding today, do the painting, and just drive it around. Somehow I guess this pipe sort of moved when I was welding it, and the muffler was actually resting on the flex pipe there, and I didn't want it to wear a hole through, so I actually wound up cutting it here and here, and angling it, and then welding it back again, which kind of sucked. But while I was there, I went ahead and welded on this part that goes on the hanger, and so now I think I finally got it in the right spot and everything, and I went ahead and painted it. As you can see, it's not my sort of favorite look, but it'll help keep the rust off, hopefully, for a bit. Alright, I've solidified everything here. I've torqued these down. I've attached the bolts down there tightly with the gasket in place here and there. And I've run the engine and there's no weird sounds. It's quiet enough. It sounds alright. So I've decided now that I'm going to go ahead and I like it, so I'm just going to do the tailpipes for real instead of just temporarily, and they're going to come through the bumper right here. That'll be on either side of the license plate, which I've looked at and I decided looks awesome. Okay, time to switch to plan B, which is to come out underneath here. And the reason is very interesting. I couldn't drill through it. This is high strength steel and I don't have any bits that can get through that. I drilled and drilled and drilled right there with various size bits and pushing, harder with a thicker bit, and I couldn't get through it. And I realized that once I do, then I've got a hole saw, which is 2.5-inch hole saw, which is notoriously difficult to use in the first place, and I'd have to go 4 times, two sides times 2 pipes, and I just am not interested in making that kind of effort. So maybe for a later date when I get something that can cut through it. I mean, I know I could cut a square in it with the angle grinder, but I didn't. I just wanted a neater job than that. I was gonna cut a round hole and then use a dimple die to keep some strength both sides, just make the appearance better too. And I mean, you shouldn't really see it because the bumper cover will be on there, but right now I just want to drive around the car for a while, and so I'm gonna just forego the awesome look for a okay look and maybe do the awesome look later. Here's the progress to this point. So in preparation for coming through the bumper, also just because I couldn't get it to really sit very well down on the bottom, I decided to go ahead and run the pipe that comes across up, and then I'm just going to bring the 2 tailpipes down. They won't be true dual exhaust because they're sharing one pipe, but that's okay. It's mostly for looks anyway. I'm getting near the end now. As soon as I get the exhaust tips worked out, I can do the finish welding on that portion and be done. I kind of solidified this one. It looked right to me, but now that I'm looking at it, it looks like maybe it's pointed a little bit that way. So I may have to rotate it just a tiny bit. This one looks pretty good, but the height shouldn't be right due to where the weld is. So I'm going to put the back bumper on now and see what it looks like. There's the back half of the exhaust system, just getting it all painted up. I'm not going to bother painting that. The idea is just to keep the rust down, and that's stainless, so it isn't really rusting to begin with. Plus I'm running out of paint. Alright, so there's the finished product. It met all of my goals. It was a lot of fun to do. I know some of the welds aren't so pretty, which is annoying, but I really like the design. I'm happy with it. Normally, if we're going to have dual exhaust coming out the bottom, I would prefer to put it on the corners, in the far corners. But I've made it so that distance is exactly the same as where I want to come through the bumper. So if in the future I want to do that, I can just cut that pipe and reuse it, and it's already spaced the right distance. So I decided that that's good enough, right? I have 3 hangers, one here. I just put a bolt. I just welded onto a bolt there and bolted a pipe on the side here. And then you have to kind of think about it when you put these hangers on, like how are you going to disassemble this, right? So I knew that when I pulled these off, I was going to slide this that way. So I made sure I put this on this side and not that side where it would want to like go on more, right? There's a second one down here, and as you can see, it barely kind of goes through, but these are really tight. I think it'll be fine, and it's not necessary because the second one, or the third one that's down there, will, that's really all I need, I think, were the 2. I just decided to use it because it was there. And that's it. So now I just got to put the bumper on everything, and I'll give you some more sound files so you can hear the difference before and after, for what that's worth. This was a fun project. It's kind of a car guy rite of passage, isn't it, to make your own exhaust?
right, there you have it. It's another long video, I apologize, but there was a lot of detail in there, I think. I just wanted to say that the sound clips you heard are normalized to each other. So the interior sound clip is at the same volume as the other interior sound clip in the exterior one. So not to each other, but to a group. So you're hearing apples and apples. And my goals were to fit it in the space, which I did, that it didn't sound obnoxiously loud, and that it functioned as an exhaust system. And I think I accomplished all those things. In fact, I originally kind of considered this just a proof of concept. All the parts I used were pretty cheap, but it worked out so well, I'm kind of considering it more of a stage 1. Stage 2 being, I'm thinking covering it up underneath there with a sort of a splitter thing. And then stage 3 might be to bring it through the bumper. I have a buddy with a plasma cutter. I think we could make that happen. But that would be in the distant future because I want to really get the Corolla running again. That's my actual daily driver. So anyway, thank you for watching. I hope it was enjoyable for you. And I got some good news. Check this out. The car is nice and clean. And in fact, so much time has passed between the start of this video and now. It has brand new tires and a brand new roof. And you can see how I put the soft top on in like the next video. But it's all been polished out and I think it's pretty good. If you see any flaws in it, it's because the paint wasn't that great to begin with. And of course, there's a spot where somebody hit me and that still needs to be fixed too. But anyway, it's decent condition right now and I'm happy with it. One last thing, I don't think I mentioned this before, but I actually have a sister channel called Antimatter Skunkworks, and I use that channel to do everything that's not car related, and you might want to check that out and see if you like to watch people build stuff. That's primarily what it is. I'm also doing this 30-day push-up challenge right now, and that video will come out soon. So if you want to watch any of that, I encourage you to go over to that channel and take a look. I'll put a link in the description, of course. All right, thanks again.